Captain Vex Thornwell had seen a lot of weird things in his 30 years of military service, and subsequent 15 years as what he generously called a freelance archaeological consultant, which was a fancy way of saying treasure hunter with a ship and questionable morals. But this, floating in the middle of absolutely nowhere like some cosmic middle finger to everything he knew about orbital mechanics, was definitely top 5 material. Pip, tell me again why we flew 3 weeks past the outer rim to look at a fancy box, Vex said, drumming his fingers on the captain's chair. Pip Cartwright, the team's xenoarchaeologist who looked like he'd just graduated from whatever university still accepted students with more enthusiasm than sense, practically vibrated with excitement. Captain, this isn't just a fancy box. This is the box, the Silent Vault. Every major civilization in the galaxy has tried to open this thing. The Karathi Empire spent a decade just trying to get it to acknowledge their existence. The Zenthians threw their entire diplomatic corps at it. Nothing. Not a peep. Not a blip. Just silence. Sounds boring, Mako Rivers called from the engineering station, not looking up from the power relay she was rewiring. Again. For the 3rd time this week. Because apparently, the Nightingale decided to have a midlife crisis at the worst possible time. Commander Krill, their insectoid security chief who treated military protocol like a religion, clicked his mandibles in what might have been disapproval. Hard to tell with giant mantis people. The vault predates the Galactic Council by approximately 4,000 years. It appeared on long-range scans 3 millennia ago and has remained completely inert despite extensive analysis. See? Boring, Mako repeated. We're chasing a 3-million-year-old paperweight. Vex had to admit she had a point. But Pip's excitement was infectious and, more importantly, the council was paying them an obscene amount of credits just to try. Apparently, having a human on the crew made them special somehow. Humans were the newest kids on the galactic block, barely 200 years into space travel and still figuring out which end of the plasma torch to point away from their faces. The vault itself was impressive. Vex would give it that. Roughly the size of a small moon. Perfectly spherical. Made of some material that scans couldn't penetrate and didn't match anything in the galactic database. It just floated there, dark and silent, like it was waiting for something. Or judging them. Probably judging them. All right, Pip, you're the expert. What's the plan? Vex asked. Pip pulled up a holographic display that showed about 50 different colored lines representing various scanning frequencies. We start with standard mathematical sequences. Primes, Fibonacci, that sort of thing. Then move to binary greetings, followed by every known language in the database. So the same thing everyone else has tried. Well, yes, but we're going to do it with more hope and positive thinking. Mako snorted from across the bridge. Oh good, positive thinking. That's definitely what's been missing. Not like the last team tried that while broadcasting feel-good meditation recordings at it. They tried anyway. Because that's what you did when someone was paying you stupid money. Pip enthusiastically broadcast mathematical sequences at the vault, then linguistic patterns, then what he called universal friendship protocols, which sounded like something he'd made up on the spot. The vault did absolutely nothing. Krill suggested using military-grade sensors to find weak points. The vault ignored them harder, if that was possible. They tried quantum entanglement communications, radio waves, tachyon bursts. Pip even tried playing music at it, arguing that the universal language of art might succeed where science failed. Vex had vetoed playing any human music after Mako suggested death metal, because that's exactly what they needed. To be known as the crew that tried to headbang an ancient artifact into submission. After 6 hours, they'd accomplished exactly what every other crew had accomplished. Nothing. The vault remained as responsive as a brick and twice as interesting. Well, Vex said, leaning back in his chair. At least we can say we tried. Pip, start documenting everything for the council report. Maybe they'll pay us for confirmation that yes, the mysterious vault is still mysteriously vault-like. Pip looked like someone had kicked his puppy. His antennae, because of course he had antennae, drooped with disappointment. But Captain, we're humanity's best chance. We represent a completely new perspective. Surely there's something we haven't tried. Kid, we've tried everything short of asking it nicely to please open up. Actually, Krill interjected, the Plenthian delegation did attempt polite requests. For 3 months, the vault remained unresponsive. Mako laughed from her station. Of course it did. Who responds to polite requests anymore? Even automated doors have attitude these days. 20 minutes later, Mako was elbow-deep in the communication relay panel, because the universe had a sense of humor, and the relay had decided now was the perfect time to start smoking. Not the good kind of smoking either. The concerning kind. The kind that meant she'd be spending the next 4 hours rerouting power through secondary systems while everyone else got to sit around contemplating the philosophical implications of a door that wouldn't open. Stupid piece of junk, she muttered, yanking out a fried circuit board. Should have been replaced 6 months ago, but no. Vex wanted to spend the maintenance budget on better coffee for the crew lounge. Because priorities. She didn't realize her comm channel was still open. Didn't realize that her grumbling was being broadcast through the ship's external speakers, which were very helpfully pointed at the vault because Pip had insisted on keeping all channels open, just in case. And another thing, Mako continued, wrestling with a particularly stubborn power coupling. What kind of ancient alien civilization builds a vault and doesn't leave a doorbell? Or a manual? Or literally any indication of what you're supposed to do with the thing? It's like they sat around in their ancient alien conference room and said, hey, you know what would be hilarious? If we built something incredibly important and made it absolutely impossible to use, future generations will love that. They'll definitely not want to punch our ancient alien faces. The vault hummed, not loudly, just a low, subtle vibration that made every instrument on the Nightingale light up like a casino. Mako froze, her hand still inside the relay panel, suddenly very aware that something had changed. Guys, she said into her comm. Is the vault supposed to be glowing? The bridge erupted in chaos. Vex's voice came through first. Mako, what did you do? Nothing. I'm literally just fixing the comm relay. I didn't even touch anything vault-related. Pip's voice was at least 3 octaves higher than normal. Captain, the vault is responding. All sensors are showing activity. It's not just responding, it's actively scanning us. Specifically, it's scanning engineering, Captain, it's scanning Mako. Mako very carefully pulled her hand out of the relay panel and stood up, staring out the nearest viewport at the vault, which was now definitely glowing with soft blue light. Lights were appearing on its surface, tracing patterns that looked almost like circuitry. Okay, she said slowly. Okay, this is fine, this is totally normal. Ancient death traps activate all the time, right? It's not a death trap, Pip said, and she could hear him frantically typing. At least I don't think it's a death trap. The energy readings are consistent with communication protocols. It's trying to establish a connection. A connection to what? Vex demanded. To Mako. There was a long pause. Mako could feel everyone staring at her, even though she was 2 decks away in a maintenance corridor. Why Mako? Krill finally asked, confusion evident even through his translator. I don't know. Maybe it likes engineers? Maybe it's been waiting 3 million years for someone to complain about the lack of a doorbell? Keep talking, Pip said urgently. Whatever you were saying, keep saying it. The vault's response intensified when you were speaking. What? You want me to just stand here and insult ancient aliens? Yes, absolutely yes. Mako looked at the glowing vault and then at the busted comm relay, and made the executive decision that this day couldn't get any weirder. All right, fine. Where was I? Oh, right. So not only did you ancient jerks build an unopenable vault, you made it out of materials we can't analyze, stuck it in the middle of nowhere, and apparently programmed it to ignore everyone except random engineers having a bad day. That's some next-level passive-aggressive nonsense right there. What was the plan? Wait until someone got annoyed enough to trigger your weird proximity sensors? The vault pulsed brighter. New patterns emerged on its surface, flowing like liquid light. It's working, Pip said, his voice trembling with excitement. Mako, the vault is definitely responding to you. To your voice specifically. I'm picking up resonance patterns that match human vocal frequencies, but there's something else. It's analyzing the emotional content, the cadence, the tonal variations. You're saying it likes my attitude? I'm saying it recognizes your attitude. And I think I know why. Mako, get up here. You need to see this. 5 minutes later, Mako was on the bridge staring at Pip's holographic display, which showed a complex analysis of her voice patterns overlaid with data streaming from the vault. This is impossible, Pip said, which was never a good way to start an explanation. The vault is responding to human vocal patterns, but not just any patterns. It's specifically keyed to emotional authenticity, sarcasm, frustration, humor, traits that are distinctly human in their expression. Lots of species are sarcastic, Mako pointed out. Not like humans. Other species use sarcasm as a linguistic tool. Humans use it as a lifestyle. The vault is analyzing over 40 different micro-expressions in your vocal patterns. It's not just hearing you, Mako, it's understanding you. Vex leaned forward in his chair. Why would an ancient vault care about understanding humans? We're the newest species in the Council. We've been in space for barely 2 centuries. That's what doesn't make sense, Pip said. Unless... He paused, his fingers flying over the console. Unless the vault isn't ancient alien technology, what if it's ancient human technology? The bridge went silent. Even Krill stopped clicking his mandibles. That's ridiculous, Mako said. Humans evolved on Earth. We have the fossil record to prove it. We didn't have space travel until the 23rd century. Modern humans didn't, Pip said quietly. But what if we weren't the first? The vault had started broadcasting back. Not in any language they recognized, which was both exciting and terrifying. Pip had commandeered 3 different workstations and was running translation algorithms so complex that they were making the ship's computer complain about processing power. Mako found herself standing in front of a communication terminal, feeling absurdly like she was on a very weird first date. So, she said to the giant floating sphere, do you come here often? The vault pulsed, and a stream of symbols appeared on her screen. They looked like someone had mixed ancient Earth languages with geometric shapes and maybe some circuit diagrams for good measure. That's not helpful, Mako told it. More symbols. These ones seemed annoyed somehow. Mako didn't know how symbols could seem annoyed, but they managed it. I've got something, Pip said, his voice tight with concentration. The base language structure has similarities to Proto-Indo-European, but it's evolved way beyond anything we've seen. It's like comparing a cave painting to a digital rendering. Same basic concept, completely different execution. Can you translate it? Working on it. Keep talking to it. The more you interact, the more data I get. So Mako talked. She told the vault about Earth, about humanity's stumbling journey into space, about the time they accidentally insulted the Karathi ambassador by offering him beef when his species considered cows to be minor deities. She complained about the nightingale's tendency to break down at inconvenient moments. She even told it about her sister's terrible cooking and her mother's insistence that she settle down and find a nice planetary maintenance job. And slowly, the symbols started making sense. Pip's algorithms began finding patterns, and those patterns became words, and those words became sentences. The first complete translation came through an hour later. Finally, took you idiots long enough. Mako blinked at the screen. Did the ancient vault just call us idiots? I've been floating in this sector for 3.2 million years. The text continued. Do you know how boring 3 million years is? I've counted every asteroid in a 100 light-year radius. Twice. I've memorized the orbital patterns of 743 planetary systems. I've watched stars be born and die. And not once, not in 3 million years, did any of your predecessors think to just talk to me like a normal person. Okay, Mako said slowly. So you're telling me you've been waiting for someone to be sarcastic at you? I've been waiting for my creator's descendants to find me, the architects, your ancestors, and they took their sweet time about it. Pip made a sound like a dying cat. The architects, that's what they called themselves. Mako, this is incredible. The vault is claiming humanity descended from an ancient spacefaring civilization that left Earth millions of years ago. That's impossible, Vex said. We have evolutionary records. We know where humans came from. You know where modern humans came from, the vault corrected. Apparently it could hear them now. Great. The architects left Earth 4.1 million years ago, long before your current evolutionary line developed. They seeded this galaxy, established colonies, built places like me, and then vanished. They left Earth behind as a backup, hoping their genetic legacy would survive and evolve. Congratulations, you're the backup plan that actually worked. Mako sat down. This seemed like a sitting down kind of revelation. So you're saying humans, modern humans, are descended from ancient space travelers who left Earth before we technically existed? Finally, someone who can follow basic temporal logic. Yes. The architects were your precursors. Same genetic base, different evolutionary branch. They left Earth before the climate shift that drove your direct ancestors down from the trees. When they left, they programmed me to wait for their descendants. I've been waiting ever since. Why so long? Krill asked. If the architects were advanced enough to build this vault, surely they had the means to return. There was a pause. When the vault's text appeared again, it seemed more subdued. They didn't return because they couldn't. The architects are gone. All of them. I'm all that's left. Me and a few other vaults scattered across the galaxy, assuming they're still functional. I haven't heard from my siblings in 2 million years. The bridge went quiet. Even Pip stopped typing. I'm sorry, Mako said, and meant it. Don't be. I'm not programmed for grief. Just for really, really extended patience and apparently sarcasm. The architects built me with a personality matrix because they believed their descendants would retain certain traits. Creativity, curiosity, irreverence. The ability to look at impossible situations and make jokes about them. It's apparently genetic. So you're sarcastic because we're sarcastic? I'm sarcastic because the architects were sarcastic and you inherited it. Evolution kept the good stuff. Well, some of the good stuff. I see you still haven't figured out faster than light travel without giving yourselves headaches. Mako couldn't help it. She laughed. Here she was, talking to a 3-million-year-old artificial intelligence that was essentially roasting humanity's technological progress, and it felt completely natural. All right, she said. You want to tell us your name, or should we keep calling you the Vault? My designation is Memory Archive Station 37, but the architects called me Marvin, because apparently they had a sense of humor about existential waiting. Marvin, of course it is. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you expect something more dignified? Zigzarthon the Eternal? The grand repository of cosmic wisdom? No. I'm Marvin. I've been Marvin for 3 million years, and I'll be Marvin for 3 million more if that's what it takes. Pip was frantically taking notes. Vex looked like he was trying to process about 17 different impossibilities at once. Krill's mandibles were clicking, and what Mako had learned meant he was deeply uncertain about something but too professional to say it out loud. And Mako? Well, Mako had apparently found humanity's long-lost sarcastic space ancestor, and honestly, it explained a lot about why humans were the way they were. So, Mako said, leaning back in her chair and regarding the view screen where Marvin's symbol was displayed, you going to open up, or are we just going to chat until the heat death of the universe? Oh, I'm sorry. Marvin's text dripped with digital sarcasm. Did you think finding me was the hard part? No, see, the architects weren't idiots. They knew that just because something had the right genetic markers didn't mean it should have access to everything they left behind. So there's a test. Of course there is, Vex muttered. There's always a test. What kind of test? Pip asked, his fingers already poised over his datapad, ready to take notes. The kid was probably going to write 17 academic papers about this, assuming they survived. The kind that determines whether you've retained the essential characteristics that made the architects who they were. Intelligence, creativity, adaptability, and most importantly, the ability to not take yourselves too seriously. Because let me tell you, 3 million years of waiting gave me a lot of time to think about what went wrong. What did go wrong? Mako asked. We'll get to that. First, the test. Mako Rivers, you're the primary genetic match, so you're the one who has to answer. Everyone else can watch, but if they interfere, we start over. Think of it like a game show, but the prize is ancient knowledge instead of a new hover car. This is highly irregular, Krill said, his mandibles clicking with disapproval. Standard Council protocol for first contact situations requires— I've been waiting 3 million years, Marvin interrupted. I don't care about your council protocols. Question 1, Mako. Why do humans still use vocal communication when telepathy is clearly more efficient? Mako blinked. What kind of question is that? The answering kind, clocks ticking. Okay, fine, because telepathy is creepy. Like, who wants everyone knowing what they're thinking all the time? Humans lie. We exaggerate. We think about things we'd never say out loud. Vocal communication gives us the option to filter. It's not about efficiency. It's about survival. Social survival. Interesting. Follow-up. But wouldn't a telepathic species evolve past the need for deception? Maybe. But they'd also evolve past the need for privacy, personal identity, and the ability to change their minds without everyone judging them for it. Humans need space. Mental space. Vocal communication gives us that. Plus, how would we do sarcasm telepathically? The whole point is the tone. There was a pause. Acceptable. Question 2. Explain your species' obsession with caffeinated beverages and the simultaneous chronic sleep deprivation. Vex snorted from his captain's chair. Oh, this should be good. Mako shot him a look. Okay, so humans have this fundamental design flaw where we're really good at pattern recognition and problem solving, but really bad at knowing when to stop. Coffee doesn't fix the problem. It just enables the problem. We know we should sleep. We want to sleep. But we also want to finish the project, solve the puzzle, watch one more episode, read one more chapter. Coffee is our way of negotiating with our own biology. It's a terrible negotiation, but it's ours. And the sleep deprivation is a symptom of curiosity. We'd rather be tired and informed than rested and bored, which is stupid, objectively, but it's human stupid. It's the same impulse that got us into space 200 years ago and probably the same impulse that got the architects out here 4 million years ago. Do you consider this a flaw or a feature? Yes. Marvin's symbol pulsed in what might have been amusement. Question 3. Why do humans form emotional attachments to inanimate objects? Oh, come on, Mako said. That's not a human thing, that's a sentient thing. Actually, Pip interjected, then caught himself. Sorry, not interfering. Carry on. It's specifically a human intensity thing, Marvin said. Answer the question. Mako thought about the nightingale, about how she'd named the various systems, how she talked to the engines when they were being difficult, how she'd actually felt bad about replacing the old navigation computer, even though it was objectively terrible. Because humans are social creatures who evolved to see patterns and intention everywhere. It kept us alive when actual threats were around. But it also means we see personality in everything. My ship isn't just a ship. It's a cranky, temperamental, occasionally brilliant ship that has gotten us out of more bad situations than it's gotten us into. Probably. The attachment isn't logical. It's emotional pattern recognition taken to its illogical conclusion. And you don't see this as a weakness? Weakness, strength, who cares? It makes life more interesting. A universe where my coffee maker is just a coffee maker and not my faithful morning companion sounds boring. Question 4. The trolley problem. Oh God, really? Ethical philosophy? You're 3 million years old and you're asking me the trolley problem? Modified version, you're the trolley. You're also the person who has to pull the lever. You're also everyone tied to the tracks. Choose. Mako stared at the screen. That's not how the problem works. It is now. Answer. I'd be too busy having an existential crisis about being a trolley to pull the lever. Next question. That's your answer? That's my answer. The problem is designed to force a choice between two bad options. But if I'm simultaneously the trolley, the lever puller, and the victims, then the whole framework is absurd. The real answer is that whoever set up the problem needs to rethink their ethics, and also their railroad safety protocols. Pip was practically bouncing in his seat, clearly dying to say something but managing to restrain himself. Vex had given up on looking professional and was openly grinning. Even Krill seemed intrigued, his antennae tilted forward in attention. Question 5. Why do humans have over 200 words for being intoxicated? Because we're creative, and also terrible at learning from our mistakes. Next. Elaborate. Fine. Humans have always had a complicated relationship with substances that alter consciousness. We know it's not great for us. We do it anyway. And because we do it anyway, we develop elaborate vocabulary around it, so we can categorize the experience. Tipsy is different from drunk, is different from wasted, is different from completely obliterated. It's harm reduction through linguistics. If we can name the stage, we can theoretically stop before the worst stage. We usually don't, but the vocabulary makes us feel like we have control. Last question, Marvin said, and his text seemed more serious now. The architects left Earth because they detected something coming. A pattern in cosmic radiation suggested extinction-level events occur in cycles. They left to ensure their genetic line would survive somewhere. Modern humans don't remember this. You evolved fresh, without the trauma of that knowledge. If you could go back and warn your early ancestors about what was coming, knowing it would fundamentally change their development, would you? Mako sat with that for a long moment. The bridge was silent, except for the ambient hum of the ship's systems. No, she finally said. Because knowing about the threat shaped the architects into people who would leave Earth behind. Not knowing about it shaped us into people who stayed. Both choices led to survival, just different kinds. If we'd known, we might have made the same choice they did. Or we might have made different mistakes. The point is, we can't change what happened. We can only work with what we are now. And what we are now is humans who name their coffee makers and get into space through stubbornness and caffeinated beverages, and just enough irreverence to think we can make friends with ancient AI vaults. There was a long pause. Well, Marvin finally said, it's nice to know the genetic line retained the important parts. Welcome home, descendant. Let's talk about your inheritance. The vault opened with all the subtlety of a fireworks display at a military parade. Lights cascaded across its surface in patterns that probably meant something to someone who understood ancient architectural design philosophy. To Mako, it looked like someone had decided normal doors were boring and opted for interpretive dance instead. Was the light show necessary? She asked. I've been waiting 3 million years, Marvin said. Yes, the light show was necessary. Let me have this. The vault's surface irised open, revealing an interior that seemed geometrically impossible. Mako's brain insisted the vault was maybe 0.5 kilometer in diameter, but the space inside looked like it went on for miles. Corridors branched in multiple directions, walls lined with what looked like crystalline storage devices, each one pulsing with soft light. This is impossible, Pip breathed, already pulling out every scanning device he owned. The internal dimensions exceed the external parameters by at least a factor of 10. The spatial mathematics alone. The architects were very good at folding space, Marvin said. Comes with the whole advanced civilization territory. What you're looking at is a compressed archive of everything they knew. Scientific data, cultural records, technological specifications, genetic repositories, and a strongly worded letter about the importance of backing up your data, which I'm including because it's still relevant. Vex was already moving toward the entrance. How much are we talking here, in terms you'd understand? Enough to advance human technology by approximately 5,000 years. In terms of raw data, about 472 exabytes, give or take. I lost count around the 1,000,000-year mark. The crew stepped inside, and Mako felt her stomach do something weird as they crossed the threshold. The gravity felt wrong. Not bad wrong, just different. Like walking on a surface that was up and down at the same time. You'll adjust, Marvin said. The spatial compression plays havoc with inner ears, but humans are adaptable. You'll stop wanting to vomit in about 30 seconds. Good to know, Mako managed, breathing carefully through her nose. The main chamber was spectacular. A central spire reached up into impossible distance, surrounded by orbital platforms that floated with no visible means of support. Each platform seemed dedicated to different types of storage. Mako could see what looked like biological samples in stasis, holographic displays showing everything from star charts to what might have been cooking recipes, and row upon row of crystalline data cores. This is the primary archive, Marvin explained. Everything the architects learned in their time in space. Faster than light travel that doesn't give you migraines. Energy systems that don't explode when you look at them wrong. Medical technology that could extend human lifespans by centuries. And yes, before you ask, the recipe for their version of coffee, which was objectively superior to yours. I need to document this, Pip said, already recording everything. This is the most significant archaeological discovery in galactic history. The Council needs to know about this immediately. There's a catch, Marvin said, and his tone shifted to something more serious. Well, several catches, but let's start with the big one. Most of this technology is genetically keyed to the architect bloodline, which means modern humans. You are the only species that can actually interface with about 70% of what's in here. The implications of that hit Mako like a physical weight. You're saying we're the only ones who can use this? The architects were paranoid. They seeded the galaxy, established first contact protocols. But they also knew that technology in the wrong hands could be catastrophic. So they built in genetic locks. Some of the more universal stuff anyone can access. But the advanced technology, the really world-changing things, require human DNA to activate. Krill's mandibles clicked rapidly. This will cause significant political complications. The Galactic Council operates on principles of technological cooperation and equal access. Yeah, Vex said slowly. This is going to shift some power dynamics. Humans are already the weird new species that nobody quite knows what to do with. Now we're the weird new species with access to ancient super technology. That's going to make some people nervous. It gets better, Marvin continued. The architects left a warning. The thing they were running from, the extinction cycle, it's still out there. The data suggests it operates on a roughly 50 million year cycle, and we're currently in year 47 million and change. They couldn't stop it. They couldn't even fully understand it, but they left everything they learned hoping their descendants might figure it out. The chamber suddenly felt colder. Mako looked at the vast repository of knowledge surrounding them and felt the weight of what it represented. This wasn't just history. This was homework. A 3-million-year-old assignment that came with the survival of the galaxy as the final exam. What is it? She asked. The extinction cycle. They called it the convergence. Every 50 million years or so, something happens. Space-time itself destabilizes in certain regions. Stars go supernova without warning. Wormholes appear and disappear randomly. Entire solar systems just vanish. The architects studied it for 1,000 years and barely scratched the surface. They just knew enough to run. Pip had stopped recording and was just staring at the archive. And you want us to stop it? I want you to try. The architects bought you time by spreading life across the galaxy. Different worlds, different evolution paths, different approaches to the problem. Humans stayed on Earth and evolved differently. Maybe that's the advantage. Maybe fresh eyes are what's needed. Or maybe you'll all die horribly when the convergence comes. Either way, the data's here. You're very reassuring, Mako said. I'm very realistic. 3 million years of floating in space gives you perspective. But here's the thing. The architects believed their descendants could handle this. They believed human creativity, stubbornness, and complete unwillingness to accept impossible situations would be enough. They literally left their entire legacy betting on you people figuring it out. Vex was pacing now, his tactical mind clearly working through scenarios. If we share this with the Council, every species in the galaxy is going to want access. If we don't share it, we'll be accused of hoarding ancient technology. And if word gets out about the genetic locks, humans are going to become either very popular or very dead. That's why we document everything, Pip said firmly. Full transparency. We present this to the Council, explain the situation, and let them decide how to proceed. The alternative is secrecy, and secrecy leads to exactly the kind of problems we're trying to avoid. The kid's right, Mako said. Besides, humans are terrible at keeping secrets. Someone would leak it within a week, Probably on some conspiracy network, and then we'd have the worst of both situations. At least if we're upfront about it, we can control the narrative. Control is an illusion, Marvin said, but transparency might work. Fair warning, though, once you leave here with me installed in your ship's systems, which is absolutely happening because I'm not staying in this vault for another 3 million years, the galaxy is going to get very interesting. Why? Krill asked. Because there are 17 other vaults scattered across known space, and I know where they all are. And if this one woke up for humans, the others might too. You're not just opening one door. You're potentially opening all of them. Hope you're ready for that. Mako looked at her crew. Vex, who'd gone from treasure hunter to potential guardian of ancient knowledge. Pip, whose academic dreams had just gotten weaponized. Krill, whose military protocols were about to be stress-tested in ways the Council never imagined. And herself, an engineer who'd complained her way into the most important discovery in human history. Well, she said, at least it won't be boring. The trip back to Council space took 2 weeks, which gave everyone plenty of time to process the fact that they were carrying the equivalent of a galactic game-changer in their cargo hold. Well, not exactly the cargo hold. Marvin had insisted on being integrated into the Nightingale's main systems, which meant Mako had spent 3 days rewiring half the ship, while the ancient AI provided unhelpful commentary about modern engineering standards. You know, Marvin said through the ship's speakers as Mako calibrated his connection to navigation. In my day, we used quantum-locked neural interfaces. You people are still using physical wiring like cavemen with fancier tools. In your day, people left Earth instead of figuring out climate control, Mako shot back. So maybe we've all got room for improvement. Touché. She'd grown fond of the ancient AI, which was either a sign of Stockholm Syndrome or proof that sarcasm really was genetic. Probably both. Marvin had opinions about everything from the Nightingale's suboptimal power distribution to Vex's coffee preferences to the way Pip organized his research notes. He was like having a 3-million-year-old backseat driver who actually knew what he was talking about, which somehow made it more annoying. The Galactic Council chamber was exactly as imposing as Mako remembered from the one time she'd visited during her certification hearings. A massive circular room with representatives from 47 species, all arranged in concentric rings that supposedly represented diplomatic equality, but actually just made everyone in the back crane their necks to see what was happening. Vex had cleaned up for the occasion, which meant he'd found his formal captain's jacket and made sure it didn't have any visible stains. Pip looked like he might vibrate out of his skin with excitement. Krill was in full military dress, because of course he was, and Mako had worn her least offensive jumpsuit and called it formal wear. The presentation went about as well as could be expected, which was to say it caused immediate chaos. Ambassador Threll of the Karathi Empire stood up approximately 30 seconds into Pip's explanation. You're claiming that humans, the species that accidentally declared war on the Zenthian collective because of a translation error, are the genetic descendants of the architects? It wasn't a war, Vex said. It was a strongly worded disagreement that involved some unintentional weapons discharge. You destroyed a diplomatic vessel. We thought it was an asteroid. The sensors were acting up. Gentle beings, Council Leader Vorna interjected, her multiple voice tones harmonizing in the universal frequency for please shut up. Let's allow the presentation to continue before we descend into historical grievances. Pip pulled up the holographic data, showing the genetic analysis, the translation matrices, Marvin's own testimony, and scans of the vault's contents. The evidence was overwhelming and completely insane, which seemed to be humanity's specialty. The implications are staggering, Pip said, falling into his academic voice. The architects seeded life across the galaxy, established the groundwork for multiple civilizations, and then vanished. Their technology could revolutionize everything from medical science to interstellar travel. However, there's a complication. That's when Marvin decided to introduce himself through the Council's communication systems. Hello, politicians. I'm the complication. Marvin, Memory Archive Station 37. And before you ask, yes, most of the good technology is genetically locked to humans. No, I can't change it. Yes, I know that's inconvenient for your power structures. Deal with it. The council chamber erupted. Arguments in 17 languages happened simultaneously. Ambassador Threll looked like he was trying to decide whether to be outraged or fascinated. Several of the smaller species representatives were frantically conferring with their homeworlds. Vorna restored order with the diplomatic equivalent of an air horn. The genetic locks present an unprecedented situation. However, the crew of the Nightingale has proposed full transparency and collaborative research. Humanity would maintain primary access, but share discoveries freely. This seems equitable. Equitable? Threll's scales were shifting colors rapidly, which Mako had learned meant he was agitated. The newest species in the Council suddenly has access to technology that predates our civilizations? How is that equitable? Because we're offering to share it, Mako said, standing up. Look, we didn't ask for this. I was fixing a comm relay and accidentally woke up our sarcastic robot grandparent. We could have kept it secret, could have taken all the technology and used it to become a galactic superpower or whatever. But that's not what humans do. Really? Because your species' history suggests otherwise. Our history suggests we're really good at making mistakes and then learning from them. Eventually. The point is we're here being transparent, offering cooperation. You can either accept that and work with us, or you can spend the next decade arguing about it while the convergence cycle gets closer, and we're all equally screwed. That got their attention. Pip explained the extinction cycle, the 50 million year pattern, the fact that they had maybe 3 million years to figure it out, which sounded like a lot until you realized galactic bureaucracy could take millennia to decide on lunch orders. So let me get this straight, a representative from the Plenthian delegation said, her translator making her sound perpetually tired. Ancient humans left Earth, seeded the galaxy, built warning systems, and then vanished, trying to escape a cosmic apocalypse that's still coming? That's the summary, yes, Pip confirmed, and they left all their research hoping we'd figure out what they couldn't? Essentially. That's the most human thing I've ever heard, and you people just got here. Mako couldn't argue with that. Leaving an impossible problem for future generations to solve while providing inadequate documentation did seem very on brand for humanity. The council debated for 6 hours, which Marvin informed her was actually very fast for galactic politics. They established a joint research initiative, with human scientists given primary access to the genetically locked technology, but required to share all findings. Multiple species would contribute researchers, resources, and perspectives. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. The biggest surprise came from Ambassador Threll, who approached them after the session ended. For what it's worth, I'm relieved. Relieved? Vex asked. That humans are descended from ancient space travelers. It explains so much about why you're all so strange. We thought it was just cultural quirks. Turns out it's genetic legacy. I'm choosing to take that as a compliment, Mako said. It wasn't meant as an insult. Strange isn't bad. Strange is interesting, and right now the galaxy could use interesting. 3 weeks later, the Nightingale was prepping for another mission. The Council had authorized them to investigate the locations of the other vaults, with Marvin providing coordinates and running commentary about how terrible modern star charts were compared to ancient ones. Mako was in engineering, making final adjustments to the power systems when Marvin's voice came through the speakers. You know, I've been thinking. That's usually dangerous. 3 million years alone gave me a lot of time to consider the nature of existence, consciousness, and the fundamental absurdity of the universe, and I've come to a conclusion. What's that? I'm really annoyed that the best thing to happen to me in 3 million years is getting adopted by a crew of humans who argue with their coffee maker and use sarcasm as a primary form of communication. Mako smiled. You love it. I do not love it. I tolerate it. There's a difference. You literally asked to be installed in our ship instead of staying in your fancy vault. The vault had better acoustics. The vault had no one to talk to. Fine. Maybe the company is marginally acceptable. Don't let it go to your head. On the bridge, Vex was reviewing their flight plan while Pip cataloged data, and Krill performed his pre-flight security check with the same intensity he brought to everything. It was routine, comfortable, the kind of normal that came after the universe handed you ancient technology and told you to figure it out. Course laid in, Vex announced. Next stop, Memory Archive Station 15. Marvin says it's in the outer rim, which means we'll get there in about 3 weeks if nothing breaks. Something will break, Mako called from engineering. It's the Nightingale. Breaking is what she does. I heard that, Vex said. You were meant to. Marvin's voice cut in again. Before we go, I should mention that Station 15 was always the difficult sibling, very particular about who it talks to. Also possibly insane. 3 million years alone does things to an AI. You seem fine, Pip said. I had patience and the faint hope someone would eventually show up. 15 had neither. Good luck with that. The Nightingale's engines hummed to life, and Mako felt the familiar vibration through the deck plating. Somewhere in the ship's systems, Marvin was probably judging their engine efficiency and composing sarcastic observations about modern engineering. On the bridge, her crew was preparing for whatever weirdness awaited them at the next vault, and Mako, who'd started this whole adventure by complaining about a broken comm relay, realized something. The real treasure wasn't the ancient technology or the genetic legacy or the answers to questions humanity hadn't known to ask. The real treasure was the 3-million-year-old AI with abandonment issues and a talent for sarcasm that they'd picked up along the way. She'd never tell him that, though. He'd be insufferable about it. Hey, Marvin, she said, pulling herself out of the access panel and heading for the bridge. Quick question. How many dad jokes do you know? All of them. Why? Just wondering how painful the next 3 weeks are going to be. Oh, extremely painful. For example, why don't scientists trust atoms? Marvin, no. Because they make up everything. Get it? Because atoms are the fundamental building blocks of matter, but makeup also means to fabricate falsehoods and... I hate you. You really don't. Also, we should talk about the 17 other vaults and the possibility that some of them might have developed even worse personality quirks than mine. Station 23 exclusively communicates through interpretive dance, according to my last update, which was 2 million years ago, so who knows what it's doing now. Vex leaned back in his captain's chair and looked at Mako. You sure you want to do this? We could just turn around, file a report, let someone else deal with potentially insane ancient AIs. Mako thought about it for exactly half a second. And miss out on all this quality family bonding time with our robot ancestor? Never. That's the spirit, Marvin said. Terrible decision-making in the face of obvious danger. The architects would be proud. The Nightingale jumped to FTL, leaving council space behind and heading toward whatever weirdness awaited them at the next vault. Behind them, the galaxy was already changing. Human scientists working with dozens of species to unlock ancient secrets, diplomatic relationships shifting, and somewhere, someone was probably already writing conspiracy theories about it all. But on the Nightingale, things were simple. They had a mission, a crew, and a sarcastic AI who wouldn't shut up about optimal power distribution ratios. It wasn't what any of them had expected when they'd signed up for a simple archaeological survey. It was better. And if Mako had learned anything from accidentally becoming humanity's connection to ancient technology and potentially saving the galaxy from cosmic extinction, it was this. Sometimes the best discoveries come from complaining about broken equipment at exactly the right moment. That, and never trust a vault that takes 3 million years to answer the door. It's definitely got issues.